And welcome back. We are joined now by Daniel Sieberg of Google to explain what people were thinking about as they watched this debate, what they were asking about. I know that they were asking about the boos. They were at one point. People wanted to know why there was so much booing, and it was particularly around the time when Donald Trump blamed George W. Bush for 9/11. There was quite a response, but at other moments as well. And there were questions about Anthony Kennedy, Bashar al-Assad, people wanting to get some context. They were curious about these references. And we should say, the first graphic that we can show you is that Donald Trump did dominate searches across the country. He was going into the debate, top everywhere, and he continued that trend throughout the course of the night. However, if you look at the horse race graphic that we have here, it will show you that he was not at the top throughout the entire debate. So you can see there's a lot of roller coastering going on here. Ultimately, he did end up at the top, but plenty of search interest around Jeb Bush, Marco Rubio, a lot of these second, third, fourth place candidates.
Daniel, don't you think some of the domination of Trump on the graphic that you just showed with red nationwide is partially due to the fact that he is the only one with name ID out of this field of candidates anywhere other than the states we're currently waging a campaign?
I think there's certainly an element of celebrity to him, of course, and you know, he's got a big following for a lot of different reasons. People are curious about the things that he said, and they react to it, right? They either have some sort of an agreement with it, or they want to go back and see what he said, or find out what people said on social media and be part of that conversation, right? So he certainly evokes a lot of reaction from people, as we know. So we've only got a few minutes left, so I want to go around and ask everybody for their final thoughts on this debate. And Rick, I'll put you on the spot first.
No, I'm happy to. I think it was one of the best debates we've seen. It was more engaging than any of the other debates, I think. There was clearly an effort by the undercard to go after Donald Trump and get under his skin, and I think they successfully accomplished that task. That was a good night for George. See, we heard so much about George Bush. I think it actually was a good night for George Bush, and a really good night for Jeb Bush. And I think Marco Rubio got back on track and had the kind of debate performance he needed to have to sort of just put behind him what happened in New Hampshire.
I think all the Bushes except maybe Millie had a good night tonight. I think one candidate who we haven't talked about who had a bad night was John Kasich. I think he had an opportunity. I don't think he performed well. He got a little bit flustered when Jeb started to attack him. He wasn't sure whether to fight back or to give up. I think disappointing night for him, but I agree with the rest of the commentary.
And he basically wrote off any criticism of his plans by saying, well, I just want to stay positive.
Right, and this is the guy who ran an ad comparing Donald Trump to Hitler, right? So, I mean, he has stayed positive, but he's not exactly a complete saint on this issue.
I think Senator Ted Cruz did not have a good night. I mean, he had some high moments in there, but he really got tethered down on his issue of immigration. Certainly went a little bit crazy on social media. But Marco Rubio stuck to that, and they almost all broke out into Spanish and then song. So, you know, if Jeb Bush had jumped in Spanish, it would have changed the whole dynamic of the race. Why did Marco Rubio say that Ted Cruz can't speak Spanish when he obviously could? Senator Cruz could say a few statements in Spanish. He has a few one-liners.
You wouldn't call him bilingual.
Admittedly, he's not.
Admittedly, he is not bilingual. I thought it was a bit of
he had a good comeback in Spanish, though. That's when you could tell he's a champion debater.
It was a little weak comeback in Spanish. It was just basically, he was a little hot-headed, a little Latino thing. But I would say, you know, it showed a little shade. Okay. But I said overall, I think he could have performed better, and he did not answer the question on DAPA, basically on the executive order authority that he was pressed on of whether or not he would use that database of undocumented immigrants to basically go door to door. And he did everything that Marco Rubio did in the last debate, stuck to his talking points, never answered the question. Steve?
I think Bush and Rubio, I agree with all of you on that. The question is what are the dynamics moving forward? Who has momentum coming out of this, if there is any? And I think the potential is that Bush really could build off of this. Rubio had a bigger bar to meet. He met it, but I think Bush there's some win back here. And now he's got George W. Bush coming in on Monday, and in this small time period before Saturday, Jeb, I don't know, I'm not going to make any predictions, but it feels like this could be a perfect storm for Jeb Bush to go up a little bit here.
Daniel? You all are the experts, but I would say it was interesting for this debate to be in the context of the passing of Antonin Scalia. We saw a lot of questions that people had, both about him, the process, what's going to happen next.
who was Anthony Kennedy. I mean, people were really involved in that discussion, and of course we'll be seeing going forward, you know, what's going to happen both with the president and with these candidates as they participate in that conversation. But that was interesting to see that lead into the debate. So. And
in the short amount of time we have left, just set the stage for us, Steve, the calendar going forward and what it means for these candidates.
So South Carolina is next Saturday. Then we have they'll have the Nevada caucuses, and then Super Tuesday, which is going to be a lot of southern states. So I think what you see happen here in South Carolina next week will probably set the stage for what winds up happening over the next couple of weeks in terms of primaries. It's going to be really important for these folks. We just heard Ben Carson say if he doesn't come in the top 3, it's not good for him. And I think we might actually see some attrition after Saturday if that's the case.
Right. Well, I want to thank.
Last thing I want to say is I just think it's great that debates play such a role in these elections, and that it's not advertisements that are the key thing. It's actually people getting on stage and arguing about issues, and I think that's good for democracy and the country, and I like getting to watch them and be part of it.
Couldn't agree more. Thank you all so much for joining me. Rick, Nick, Leslie, Steve, Daniel, it's been great to be with you. And thank you for joining us and watching on CBSN. I want to give a big shout out to Vlad Duthier, who diligently stood by in New York, just in case it all fell apart here, Vlad. You were ready to come to the rescue. We really appreciate it.
You guys were amazing. What wonderful discussion, analysis. Thank you guys all. It was great watching you.
Oh, thank you so much. We appreciate that. We would have loved to chat with you too.
Best audience ever.
Take it away, Vlad.
All right, that wraps it up for us at CBSN. We are always on, and so am I, apparently. See you next time.